welcome back or welcome in. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Magpie, for those of you that don't know. As I've mentioned before, I'm a busy person and finding time for art can be really hard. So as a person with very little time, I thought it would be a great idea to challenge myself to complete 4 portrait studies a week for 3 weeks. I was expecting to learn some things, but I wasn't expecting to see a difference so quickly in my art. So today we'll be looking back and talking about everything I learned from doing 12 portrait studies in 3 weeks. My goal for week 1 was to learn how to stylize faces when referencing photos, as well as really nailing down the features of each person I was referencing. I think I struggled the most with this week. When I first started this study, I was missing my cousin, who had been abroad for a little over a year. She sent us tons of pictures, and she was glowing in all of them, so I wanted to draw her first. Back when I had a much more cartoony style, I always drew her with these flower petal or bubble eyelashes, so I added them here for the nostalgia. For her privacy, I won't be showing the image I referenced. The second study was done off of a picture I found on Pinterest. All of these other ones were. She turned out very green themed, very Shigo from Kim Possible. I think here I made a lot of mistakes with the placement of the eyes and the shape of the nose. I don't think it looks bad, I just would try to do things differently on a second attempt. The third portrait, I decided to push her features more, which caused her slightly pointed ear to become a very elf ear. She's a business elf. I liked how the expression and lighting turned out on her. I did start noticing a lot more shapes as I was going through and specifically coloring in this one. It was easier to see the different planes of the face. What I mean by that is you can see where there are parts of the face that face up and parts that face to the side. A good example is the cutoff on the right side of the study between the top of the cheek and the side of the cheek. For the fourth study, I was struggling. I don't know if it was the lighting or the colors in the reference, but my brain was not computing it. In the end, I think it turned out pretty well. I think the issue with this one is the reference I chose had very soft lighting. I also think I was not as confident as I could have been when laying down darker or more saturated colors, which led to the drawing being very muddy and washed out. During this week, the main thing I realized was I had a lack of confidence when picking colors, using darker values to define shadows, and I was afraid to commit to certain features like lips. But I don't think I was prepared for the growth I'd see in week 2. For this week, I wanted to start off with a harder angle and more intense lighting. This one was a challenge for sure, but so rewarding. I love how it turned out, and I learned a lot about facial structure with this one. Practicing drawing the underside of the chin and the nose and figuring out how that's supposed to look can be very useful and can really build out your mental library. My main goal with this more intense lighting was to push myself to really commit to darker values for shadows and letting the contrast between darks and lights be more noticeable. Now for the first male model I referenced. I have a really hard time drawing men. I'm sure with practice I'll become good at it, but currently I struggle with it for sure. I feel like in this study that was not very obvious. I feel like I was able to make him look fairly accurate to the reference. Again, if you look closely, you can see where in the separation of the lights and the shadows, there are these different planes on the face, and it became clearer and clearer to me as I was studying where exactly those planes begin and end. Something I was using alongside this to help me visualize those different planes is the Azaro head. That is a face that's broken down into the different planes that you will see as an artist, where you want to cut off light and cut off shadow. Now that I've been drawing for a while, it's easier for me to see these different planes and start breaking things down into their smaller shapes or larger shapes depending on how detailed you're becoming. But I think something like the Azaro head would be very beginner friendly for most artists trying to learn how to break down those planes. When I was looking for portrait references, I found this beautiful model and decided to reference her. But this one was in grayscale, so I kept it that way, feeling I needed more practice rendering dark skin before I started guessing on how to do it. I have tried it a few times, but since this study was more about stylization and nailing facial features, I felt coloring this one in was not fully necessary for the purpose of the study. My main goal was to make her look accurate. After this, I realized there was a gap in my rendering knowledge, so I started looking for models that had varying skin tones, so I could practice as I went. The next study was one of my favorites. I feel I really succeeded in nailing down her features in a recognizable way. This week, I really started getting a feel for a streamlined rendering process. I would lay down the base colors, add the lighting, then medium shadows, and finally the darkest shadows. Now, even with references with softer lighting, I wasn't going to lose the same amount of detail I was in the first week. I also felt more confident using more saturated colors. For this one, I really wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone and try a couple of new things or things I hadn't practiced very often. With this model, I was struggling with the color picking and rendering. I think it turned out pretty well, but I wish I was able to figure out what felt off. Let me know if you see something I'm missing. Overall, I think this one turned out alright. Maybe it's because this was the first one I did this week, but I feel this one did not turn out as good as the others I finished during this week. Her skin was very reflective, but maybe I chose the wrong color to show that reflected light. I saw a beautiful picture and my brain saw the colors, and study be danged, I wanted to draw this one. I love how it turned out. I was listening to Epic the Musical a lot during this time, and I think my love for Penelope's character fed into this one. Don't ask me to explain the science of it. All I know is I was very inspired this day. I will say, I think I may have been duped by AI with this one. I'm not sure how, because now that I'm looking at it again, it very clearly looks like AI, but we got Penelope fan art out of it, so all's well that ends well, I suppose. I wish it was easier to find more real references on Pinterest. Recently it's been very hard. Hopefully they'll get a little bit more advanced with their AI filtering so you can actually see real reference images. On to the next study. This one may be my favorite. It might be a tie between this one and the very last study I did, but the rendering is the best I've ever done on a darker skin model to date. I feel in the past my color picking or lack of confidence in rendering made a lot of characters with darker skin feel flat or dull. I feel like I was finally able to get that life and depth I've been trying for in this study. I think for my next study, I need to learn how to render and draw hair more consistently. I feel like I wasn't as focused on the hair as much as I was focused on the facial anatomy and stylization study, but I do want to learn how to render beautiful hair. Last one. I loved this one. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. I loved all of these studies so much, and I feel like I grew so much during these 3 weeks. I really wanted to push for depth and accentuate the model's features. The nose, the face, her hair, it all turned out so good. I feel like I was able to make these last few look especially three-dimensional. I also feel that I became much more comfortable committing to unique and defined features. I think some of the biggest things I grew in were my color picking abilities and my confidence in putting hard or soft edges when rendering to define those planes of the face. I think it turned out so well, and I am just so proud of myself for pushing myself this hard to get to the point that I did on week 3. Thank you for joining me today. If you like the videos or you find them interesting, you could, you don't have to, but you can. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!